Hello again, and thank you so much for watching the last video where we discussed uh, your goals and also making weight. In this particular video, we want to discuss lifting smart, but specifically your game plan worksheet and ultimately the strategy calls that we're going to get on with you and your personal coach. We will soon be emailing you game plan and strategy worksheets, which we are going to ask you to complete and return to us. And what that does is it enables us to get an idea of where your head is at, what you're thinking in terms of your numbers and so forth. And then we are going to collaborate. And I've said that from the very beginning. This is a collaboration. This is a partnership. And partnerships and relationships require good communication. And we think we've been doing that from the very beginning. And we're going to continue to do that. And so ultimately, once you complete your strategy and worksheet and email it back to us, we are then going to hop on some game planning video calls so that we can literally and figuratively interface with each one of you, as well as your personal coach, to collaboratively install your competition game plan and strategy heading into Euros. And ultimately, of course, we'll do this for those who are going to Worlds as well. And what that's going to look like, it's going to be a worksheet that has every single warm-up, every single attempt. Is it etched in stone? No, of course not. It is an outline. It is a draft, if you will. It's not so rigid that we, absolutely have to stick to it on game day. We're not foolish. We're going to take what's there. We're going to lean into you as the lifter, to how you're feeling, to how you're performing. But it is an opportunity for us to have something down on paper so that we can stay organized, so that we can be professional, and so that we can literally and figuratively plan for your performance. And so soon, as I said, we will be emailing you these strategy and worksheets. And I personally am requesting to the lifters that I email them to that you return them to me by Sunday, March 2nd. And here's why. The lifters that I am going to connect with on strategy calls, those calls need to take place sometime between Monday, March 3rd and Monday, March 10th. Now, you might say to yourself, why are you requesting this information so early, and why are we hopping on these strategy calls so early? Well, the reason is I'm leaving the country and traveling to Spain on Wednesday, March 12th, and I want to have a plan in place for each of you prior to traveling. We are not going to wait until we get over to Spain and ultimately, or Germany when the time comes, to install your game plan. We're going to have a game plan in place prior to our boots touching on the ground. I have no idea what the internet signals are going to be like. Then we're coordinating different time zones and so forth once we're over there. But now it's just easier for us to install your game plan before we travel. And for those of you who might be saying, well, you know what? I've got a couple extra heavy sessions left. That's absolutely fine. Again, this is an outline. Consider it a rough draft. We can amend this document. That's where the athlete monitoring system comes in handy, because when you add in your training for the week, we can make changes, but at least we will have a rough draft in place. And if we need to amend the document once you touch down in Spain and ultimately Germany, then of course we can make changes to the plan. But it's important to have that plan in place, or at least a rough draft of a plan in place prior to leaving. And so what I want to do now is stop talking just to you, but essentially show you the worksheet that I'm going to be sending out, what it looks like, how to use it, and then how we might work through that on a phone call. And then I'll be back to share with you what a copy of the game day strategy worksheet that I will be sending out to some of you is going to look like. Other coaches may have a variety of iterations of this, but it's one that I've created for the national team and that the lifters that I will be working with will be using. As you can see here, my man Nanzo was gracious enough. I reached out to him and asked him that if I could use him as an example, and he graciously accepted and said that I could. And so I am going to use his information here to show you kind of how to build out the worksheet. So if you notice up here in the upper left-hand corner, added in the fresh British powerlifting logo. Of course, I've got Nanzo's name. What's cool about that is once I click on his name, I've inserted a hyperlink. So when I click on his name, it takes me right to his open powerlifting, which is really helpful because it shows me all of his personal bests, his recent competitions, the type of progressions that he likes to make between attempts, and just his entire results here, if you will. So that becomes really handy if you just click on that. But we're going to go back to the sheet. What I've also entered, obviously, is the name of the competition. Right here is a drop-down menu. that I entered. Nanzo's obviously male. He's going to be lifting in the open, so you can select that. His weight class, again, another drop-down menu. I have every single iteration of weight classes, regardless of federation. So look, if you decide to use this sheet moving forward, you can use it. Just change the logo to suit your needs. Here I put the flight that he'll be in. Clearly, he'll be lifting in the primetime session. Typically, the women go first, followed by the men. So he'll be in the A group. He'll be in the second flight. This is an area that I typically leave blank, but that's where I would likely enter his lot number, but we're going to leave that blank for now. So what I've done, if you're just looking at the rest of the sheet, is I've left most of it blank, but there's some key and vital information that I've entered up here at the top. And so working left to right, I've taken Nanzo's comp PB in each discipline, followed by what he hit at the last comp. I also have a field here for this training best. Now, I'm only putting in what Nanzo's done so far. Last week in the athlete monitoring system, he put in that he did a 340 for a single out of 7 and so on for the bench and the deadlift. I've got his personal best over here in IPF GL points. And then key and important for this meet is I've listed European records, and I'll do this for each of you and for each and every weight class for the lifters that I'm coaching. And then, of course, the world record. And the reason that becomes important, even if you're not able to eclipse or take advantage of a European or a world record, it's important for us to know what they are, because when chips are in play, that could affect our strategy and so forth. So there's some vital information. So I've done that for each discipline, the squat, the bench, the deadlift, and it just gives us some data points and some talking points. Now, clearly, these training best fields here that I've already entered in for Nanzo are going to change because he's got, 3, 4 more training weeks, what have you, before the competition. So we will enter those. Over here, under objectives and notes, I put in his 2 objectives, and he told me as much from his intake form when I asked what his personal goals were. And he said he wanted to win. And then, of course, the second was deadlift record. And I've also left a space here for potentially a tertiary, maybe even a quaternary goal, so that we can set up multiple opportunities for success. So clearly, with winning in mind and the deadlift record, I've written that down so it's clear. It's very, it's in our face, just so that we're reminded of what it is that he wants to accomplish on game day. So what I like to do is scroll down here to the bottom of the sheet, and I've got 2 tabs, 2 iterations. Kilos to pounds is probably the one that we're going to use because the international lifters prefer that. Of course, I've got one over here that's pounds to kilos, but we're going to focus on kilos to pounds. And what I like to do is start at the attempts and then work our way backward through the warm-ups. So again, I have not spoken with Nanzo yet, nor his coach, James Adcock. The 3 of us are going to be getting on one of these strategy calls, and we are going to collaboratively work through this sheet. This is not, I'm not an authoritarian. I'm not a dictator. I'm not going to say, hey, this is the plan, and you're going to abide by it. The 3 of us are going to collaboratively install his game plan based upon the data, based upon his previous best, based upon, of course, his goals, and of course, his current level of fitness and form, and what we think he's capable of and what he's shown to be capable of doing. But so I am just right now creating, this is just an example. And I'll admit, it's a conservative one. I'm going to set it up so that he can hit PBs here in each discipline. But I fully suspect that he will be capable of more than what I'm inputting. But I'm just inputting this for the sake of creating a visual aesthetic, if you will, so that you all can see it. So let's assume if we know that Nanzo's comp PB here is 345, we're going to generously give him a 350 kilo PB on the 3rd attempt. And then what I like to do is kind of work backward to the opener. So that might look like a second attempt of somewhere around 335, and perhaps he's going to open at 15. And I know, judging from his open powerlifting, that those kind of look like some of the progressions that he likes to take, a 20 kilo jump and then perhaps a 15. Maybe it's a 17 and a 12 or a 17 and a 15. And the top end of the range is highlighted by these cells that are highlighted in yellow. That represents the top end of the range. And then, of course, so that would be a 2A attempt and a 3A attempt. And then we like to write in a 2B and a 3B. Occasionally, we'll even add a C attempt or so forth, like a 3C. But I consider the 3B the bottom of the range, and then we can kind of work in between there. So if we're just filling in the blanks here, the remainder of the attempts might look something like that, And then what we want to do is, after we have determined what his attempts are for the day, and like I said, take this with a grain of salt. I actually think he'll be stronger based on how that 340 looked at a 7, and he's got more training coming his way. But again, just for the sake of creating a visual thing for you all to look at, we're just being conservative. I'm assuming he can hit 350 on his third attempt. We like to work our way backwards, and we're just going to type in some warm-ups. So I know that if he's taking a 20 kilo progression here, that we want to make it at least that big or perhaps a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to write in some potential warm-ups here. This might look like something that he might do on game day or something kind of similar. And so he might start with a red, 1, 2, 3 reds, and then maybe we're changing the jumps. And I know sometimes he probably goes 1, 2, 3, 4 reds. But if we do that and then we go to 5 reds, then look, it gets kind of clunky because we've taken 50 kilo jumps, then a 25 and then a 30. So that's why I had it written out this way. It also saves him some load in the back. We don't want to turn this into a workout. It's just a warm-up. It's just to get him primed and ready for what's to come on the platform. So these are just some examples, again, not etched in stone, of what we might hypothetically create in terms of a warm-up plan for him. I'm going to leave the reps blank because we can basically, you can auto-regulate those on game day. They're not so important. You're not going to get any pushback from the national team coaching staff so long as you're not treating this like a workout and doing 5 to 8 reps per set. But this might look something, along the lines of, something like that. Look, some lifters like to do singles all the way through. When I've coached Ray Williams or Samantha Calhoun, some lifters like that, they matter-of-factly just like to do singles. But again, I will leave this field blank and the lifter can fill it in or not. It doesn't even matter. But that's a good structure there. Those look like solid attempts if we were going to end at about a 350 kilo, third squat. And I don't need to do this for every single discipline. I think you get the idea. But again, let's just assume that Nonzo's in top form. He's hit a 210 bench. Let's just assume that he's going to hit a 215. Heck, I might even think he might be good for 220 on game day, but that remains to be seen. So again, let's just see that he's good for 215. And I know that mythical 400 deadlift that he's been aiming for is certainly on the table. He's shown an aptitude to do that. Let's just plug in 400 here. The nice thing about the sheet is it builds itself out over here. And we're assuming that if Nonzo were to hit all of his 3A, that's his top end attempts, look at that whopping total that he would achieve. He would have a 965 kilo total versus his comp PB up here at 938. So that's just a humongous personal best total. We can write in his squat rack heights here, his bench and so forth. We have a place to record his body weight. We can manually enter at the end of the day what he's done. These fields right here are actually an opportunity for us to record where he will be warming up in the flight. So for instance, assuming that he's lifting in one of those primetime sessions, those are short flights, he's going to be 8, let's just assume that he's the sixth squatter out of 8. So we might write something in like that on game day, but we just leave those blank for right now. But that's what those cells are for. It's just for the coaches to know where he is in the queue, so to speak, for warming up. So each of you will be getting one of these sheets. Again, I would like the lifters that I send it to please remit it to me no later than Sunday, March 2nd. And then, of course, we will schedule your game planning and strategy calls where I'm going to get on the phone with you and your personal coach, and we can work through this worksheet together and collaboratively install your scene, a copy of what your game plan and strategy worksheet might look like and how we're going to work through that process together. There's really not a whole lot more to say. Just continue to keep working hard, remaining consistent, staying on top of your nutrition, obviously your body work, sleep. All of that stuff is really vital at this juncture. Just focusing on the things that you can control. Quite frankly, all of the rest of it is trivial. But I appreciate you watching. Do stay tuned for the emails where I'll be sending out this, and I will be connecting with each of you to schedule our strategy calls with you and your personal coach. And do watch out for next week, where in the final video we will discuss the banquet and travel tips. Thank you so much for watching.